Welcome to BioSci Careers Transition Series. We're very pleased to videotape our transitions lectures, and tonight we'll be talking about interviewing. And on our agenda today are to cover interview tips, preparation, and strategy. Sometimes I'll start a sentence and I don't even know where it's going. I just hope I find it along the way. I think most people feel this way when they first begin interviewing. And today we'll talk about how to not feel like Michael Scott. Probably most of you are familiar with Michael Scott from The Office. So how do you not be like him? First of all, you need to know your talking points. And the most important talking points are your accomplishments and achievements and examples that illustrate your relevant strengths and skills. Also want to know your audience. So if you're speaking to a hiring manager, the hiring manager has different interests than, say, the recruiter or the VP of a company. So what is an interview? It's an opportunity to showcase your relevant strengths and your accomplishments. And it's an opportunity for the employer to decide whether you're a good fit for the position, and also an opportunity for you to decide if this position is a good fit for you as well. It's not a confession. And the reason I bring that up is a lot of times people want to be honest, and what happens is they wind up talking about their weaknesses instead of their strengths. What you really want to focus on are your strengths, your accomplishments, and your achievements. So know before you go, who is whom in industry? Recruiter is the person who finds and screens candidates. Human resources, they recruit, screen, interview, and place workers. The hiring manager is the person who you will work for directly. Sometimes that person is referred to as your supervisor, but typically the hiring manager. The director or VP, these are mid-level executives typically. And then CEO, CFO, CMO, these are your senior executives. These titles can vary within companies, however. But that just gives you an idea of who you might be interviewing with. If you're applying for a faculty position, your search committee can be made up of the following people: the chair of the department, dean or provost, president or chancellor, depending on the size of the institution, grad students, postdocs or undergrads, and potential faculty collaborators. So when you're meeting with each person, ask yourself, what does this particular person care about? The chair of the department and the dean of the institution care about very different things. Types of industry interviews. So phone or Skype interviews are pretty common these days. The phone screen will typically be with the recruiter or human resources or with the hiring manager. If it's with recruiter or HR, they are going to check and see, do you meet the basic qualifications of the job? And they'll ask you questions about your experience, cultural fit, and maybe some behavioral questions, like tell me about a time when you had a difficult conversation with a colleague. Phone screens with hiring managers typically are technical interviews, so expect to really get into depth about your technical expertise. And they might ask some behavioral questions, but I would definitely be prepared to discuss everything that's on your resume in terms of your scientific work, especially if you're applying for a scientific position. If you have a phone screening with other managers or mid-level executives, again, it may very well be a technical interview. And if you're interviewing with a C-level executive, then that person may ask big picture questions. For example, where do you see this industry going in the next 5 years? All of them will be screening for red flags or poor cultural fit. So it's really important to be on your best interviewing behavior while you're on these phone screens. So types of industry interviews: in-person interviews then follow typically your phone screen. They are usually a few hours to a full day. If you're applying for a science position, you will definitely be making a presentation, and the length can vary from 15 minutes to an hour. You'll also have individual interviews all day long and occasionally a panel interview. People who may be involved in your interview are colleagues, the hiring manager, other managers, executives, HR, and potentially anybody in the company. I've had interviews with people who had no relationship whatsoever to my job. So you never know who will be involved in your interview. And then you may have follow-up interviews with mid-level or senior level executives. For example, if you apply for a medical science liaison position, You may be flown across the country to meet with a senior level executive after your first or second interview. And usually only candidates are invited to full day interviews, and that's the same with academic jobs. They're very long, they're very time consuming and expensive. So if you're invited, that means you are one of the final candidates out of a few. For academic interviews, you may also start out with a phone or Skype screening. Academic interviews tend to be 2 days, but can occasionally be 1 day. And then followed up sometimes by another full day interview where you're nailing down the details of a potential offer. You would be giving a job talk, sometimes a chalk talk or teaching demonstration. And then there will also be dinners, typically the night that you fly in and possibly the second night that you're there. So what are the 2 most important things you can do before an interview? One is to practice interviewing, and you can do that by making an appointment with one of us at BioSci Careers. You can practice also with colleagues. And to get into a positive state of mind, and remind yourself of all your accomplishments and achievements, because that way they will come to your mind very quickly when you're interviewing, and you can talk about them as your key talking points in the interview. And also avoid comparing yourself internally to others. You want to be feeling confident when you go to the interview. So anything that you can do to remind yourself of your accomplishments, feel good about them, that's the best, that will get you to the best frame of mind. What to wear for an academic job, just go with a black or dark gray suit. For an established biotech or pharma company like Genentech, Merck, Gilead, I would also go with the black or dark gray suit. Startups and tech hybrids like Google, that can vary a little bit. Depending on if they consider themselves more techie, they'll be more casual. So what I recommend is you can Google it to see what to wear to the interview. You can sit in the parking lot and see what people are wearing. It also depends on the role. Any customer-facing roles like medical science liaison, business roles, wear a suit. For a science role, it could be business casual, but it's better to be overdressed rather than underdressed. Of course, your clothes should be clean and fit well. Wear comfortable dress shoes since you'll be there all day. If you need to carry a bag of some sort, just make sure it looks professional. And if you want to carry something that looks professional to keep your CVs or resumes in and a pen, you can carry a portfolio like the one shown here. It's really important to relax the night before an interview because not getting a good night's sleep or feeling stressed, that will inhibit your performance at the interview. And prepare a list of questions before you go. Here are some examples of questions that you might want to ask, and be sure to write a list of questions that matter to you rather than kind of a stock list of questions you might find online. How would you characterize the corporate culture here? How do you describe your management style? How would you describe your manager's management style? This, by the way, is the best way to find out what the manager is actually like, because if you ask a colleague this question, and if it's a fantastic manager, the person will immediately say, I love my manager. This is one of the best managers I've ever had. If it's a terrible manager, the person is going to pause while they try to come up with a politically correct answer. So that is your sign right there. If they don't answer right away, that there could be a red flag about the manager. What are the greatest opportunities and challenges working here? What are the teaching expectations in this position? This is a faculty job. And what are the next steps in and timeline for the interview process? So people in industry do not refer to industry as industry. This is something that only happens typically on campuses. So find out how the company refers to itself, and then when you're interviewing, refer to the company in that same way. So Genentech refers to itself as a biotech company, for example. When I worked in Novartis, we referred to it as pharma. So figure that out before you go in for the interview and use the correct terminology. It's important to eat, especially when you have an all-day interview in front of you. You might want to throw a little bottle of water in your bag. Be sure to bring a pen and resumes for each person that you're meeting with in case they lose a copy of your resume. Leave, I would say, at least double, if not triple the amount of time you think you need to get there to make sure that you're not late for the interview. I almost was late for my interview here, even though I had set aside 45 minutes just to park my car and find the building. So be safe and leave yourself triple the amount of time you need. So what 4 things do industry employers want to know about you? First of all, do they think you'll be successful in the position? Would they like working with you? Do you really want this position, or are you just applying for any position? And are you a good fit for the department? And also, each interviewer has different interests and questions about you. If you're interviewing with colleagues, they might want to make sure that you're not going to infringe on their territory. If you're interviewing with the VP of a company, that person will want to know how well you know the industry in general. If you're interviewing for a faculty position, faculty interviewers want to know, is your work exciting, innovative, and fundable? Can you build a research group and successfully compete in your field? And will you be a great colleague, teacher, and mentor? There's 4 things that you should try to find out as well when you're interviewing. Will you provide the tools or resources or support I need to be successful? Would I like working with you? Does this position fit with my interests and skills and career goals? And is this a department and company or institution a good fit for my personality and values? So WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get, goes as well for interviewing as it does for computer interfaces. If you're treated really well throughout the interview process, that could be a good sign this is a nice place to work. If you're treated disrespectfully by multiple people throughout the process, that could be seen as a red flag about the culture you're getting into. So it's important to articulate the value that you can add. You were invited to the interview for specific reasons. I'm not sure what that is. Let me see if I can fix it real quickly. Thanks, Marlene. So why do you think they invited you to the interview? And be sure to be able to articulate this to the person that you're interviewing with. When they saw your resume, they thought, aha, this person has some particular skills or experience or background that we need to have. It's really important throughout the day to try to listen very carefully, make eye contact, highlight your strengths, and don't volunteer your weaknesses. It's important to keep your interview answers short, less than 1 minute, ideally around 30 seconds, except for the big picture questions like, tell me about your research, or tell me about yourself. Say I rather than we, and avoid being negative, defensive, or angry. We'll be answering questions afterwards. Thank you. So there are 2 different kinds of skills that you want to be talking about during the interview day. The first are hard skills. These are skills required to do the job, such as data analysis, supervision, MATLAB, Western blot. And soft skills, these are the skills that help you do the job well, such as your writing skills, organizational skills, and listening abilities. You want to talk about both, but employers and industry are more concerned about hearing about your hard skills. So when you give an answer, so for example, if the employer says to you, what are your strengths, you can say, I have 2 key skills that I'd like to tell you about, and let me give you an example of each. And then you might want to list 1 hard skill and 1 soft skill. But avoid focusing overly on the soft skills in industry interviews when answering questions, because they're primarily concerned about your technical skills. Play offense rather than defense. Whenever you get a question that puts you on the defensive, you want to answer in a way that is playing offense. So here's a question, for example. Why are you leaving academia? Negative. I don't like writing grants. Positive. For a long time, I've wanted to work in biotech so I can develop oncology medications that will extend cancer patients' lives. So you could see the difference between the negative and the positive, or playing offense and playing defense. Demonstrate a growth mindset. So let's say you're asked a question about a skill that you've never used. How can you answer that? So for example, the question is, do you know Python? Answer, I haven't used it, but I would use the same strategy to learn it as I did to teach myself R, and then explain how you taught yourself R. Articulate your transferable skills. Question, do you have experience making presentations to pharmaceutical executives? Answer, I've been invited to speak at 6 immunology conferences. The audiences have included executives and key opinion leaders from major academic institutions, so I'd feel confident about making presentations to pharmaceutical executives. So you see how you take the skill set you've developed in one situation, and you clearly articulate for the employer how you'll use it in this particular job. Demonstrate intentionality. So for example, why did you change postdoc labs? Answer, I joined Dr. Smith's lab to learn mouse model skills. After 2 years there, to further my research interests, I needed to learn data science. So I moved to Dr. Jones's lab, where I gained data science experience. My experience in both labs enabled me to achieve a first author publication in X. So instead of having it look like something went wrong when you went from one postdoc to another, or you hadn't been intentional about choosing to go from one to the other, you're showing your intentionality behind that. Making mistakes. Olympic ice skaters, they wipe out on the first quadruple axel. They have to get back up and keep skating the best they can. Same with interviewing. If you feel like you messed up, try to just brush it off, get back up, and be kind to yourself. So closing the interview, it's important to ask the interviewer for their business card so you can send a thank you email if you don't already have their email address. And it's important to close the interview. You will be the rare person who does this, and it will really make you stand out. If you're interviewing with a recruiter, you can say, I'm really excited about this position and would appreciate the opportunity to move forward in the interview process. With the manager or chair of department, I'm excited about this position because it's an excellent fit with my experience and career goals. I hope you'll offer me the position. With colleagues, I hope we'll have the opportunity to work together. I guarantee you're the only person who's going to do this, but it really expresses your interest in the position. Be yourself. So at the top we have at the job interview self, and below the 10 minutes after getting home self. People will also often ask me, what do you mean by be yourself in an interview? What it means is be your professional self, which is the same self that you are here at Stanford or the same self you are at a conference. And even when you're in between interviews, if you're talking to people on the phone, if you're emailing, all of that is part of the interview process. So you want to keep that professional self going during those situations as well. Attributes valued by employers. Particularly in Silicon Valley, employers are looking for self-starters, self-motivated people who are accountable, they collaborate, they're diplomatic, conscientious. Proactiveness or having a can-do attitude is key. If you ever see the carpet is kind of flipped over and people just keep walking over it and somebody's going to trip on it at some point and get hurt, nobody ever fixes that carpet. Be the person who fixes that carpet. This is what industry employers are expecting. If you see a problem in your job, be proactive and try to solve it. Problem solving, same thing. Enthusiasm, strong ethics, flexibility, reliability, and self-motivation. This is really what an industry employer is looking for. So speech. Did anybody ever see the Seinfeld episode, the low talking episode? It was a long time ago. But it's hilarious because a woman is talking and nobody can hear her, and Jerry Seinfeld winds up committing to wearing this hideous shirt on a TV show. Low talking is when people can't hear your voice. If you're one of those people who, whenever you talk to somebody, they keep asking you to repeat yourself, that's a sign that you need to speak up a little bit. Avoid saying like. Uptalk is when you're making a statement, but your voice rises at the end as if you were asking a question. That makes you sound like you are lacking confidence. So be sure to try to avoid using uptalk. And it's very contagious here at Stanford. Everybody uses it. So even I have to be very, very careful to not do that. Vocal fry is if your voice sounds like mine, but you don't have a physiological reason for it sounding like mine. It's when you speak in a register lower than your normal voice. And what happens is it kind of has a slacker sound, kind of a lazy, laid-back sound. And by the way, you can look all of these up on YouTube and see examples of what these are like. So what do you want to do? You want to speak clearly, audibly, and confidently. I really believe my research abilities would be an asset to whatever this company is called. This is obviously something that you don't want to be doing. It's really important to be prepared and to know the company before you go in. So what interview preparation should I do? Really review the company website or the university website, depending on the type of position you're applying for. And in terms of industry companies, these are all the different areas that you can look at, such as the products, the pipeline, the technology, media, investor page, etc. The mission statement, the values pages are important as well. It's important, if you're applying for a scientific job, to really understand the company's products. And that means, if you may want to read the prescribing information for that drug or the drugs in that disease area that you'd be working on, because they may ask you about that in an interview. Especially if you apply for a customer-facing role like a medical science liaison, they will quiz you on the prescribing information. For academic jobs, make sure you look at all the different websites housed in the university website. For example, the department website, the school, the dean's page, the website of each interviewer, and you can look at what kind of research each interviewer has done. You can Google the company or the institution as well to see what other people are saying about it. And you can do informational interviews with people who work there currently or who worked there previously to get insider information about the organization and the people you'll be meeting with. You also want to have an idea of the ideal salary range before you go in. Hopefully nobody will ask you what you want to make until you've reached the end of the interview, because you really can't know what you want to be making until you really understand that job very well. But if they do ask you what your desired salary range is, prepare ahead of time by using any of these websites. If you're asked, how much do you want to make, the best way, there's two different ways that you can respond. One is to say, what is the salary range for this position? And the other is to say, a salary that's competitive for the skills and experience I bring to this position. The reason why you don't want to speak first is because typically he who speaks first, or she, her, I'm trying to think of the female version of that, but he who speaks first loses in salary negotiations. You can be off by $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 if you speak first. You just really don't know. So try to get them to give you the salary range first, and of course you do that in a diplomatic manner, and these are two different ways that you can do that. Never accept a verbal offer on the spot. Whenever somebody calls you and says, I'd like to make you an offer, how does this sound, or even in the live face-to-face interview, don't accept it on the spot. What you do is you say, thank you very much, I'm really excited about this position and your offer. I'm looking forward to reviewing the entire compensation package, because you cannot make a decision about a salary until you've seen all the benefits. Benefits can be worth another third of the salary offer on top of your salary. And the most important thing is to prepare ahead of time. So once you start interviewing, make sure to set up some appointments with BioSci Careers so you can practice negotiating before you even get into that situation. Right after the interview, it's a good idea to jot down the pros and cons, how you felt about the company, what did you like, what did you not like, to send thank you notes within 48 hours to each person that you met. And to congratulate yourself, because you put a lot of time and effort into this, and it's really important to give yourself a clap on the back, because it's a challenging thing to interview. And interviews will get easier as you go along. And just go in there and remember that you're fantastic.